Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. My name is Steve Smith and I'm your host as always, and I always hope to bring this to you regularly. But look, this time I've got something a little bit different. I've got Aussie Golf History, bringing back the segment Aussie Golf History. I haven't done one in a while, and that's where I want to showcase and talk about some of the past parts of Australian golf, and usually that's Australian golf courses and it's Australian golf personalities. And I have done a couple of episodes in the past, and I want to bring them to you as I do my research and get some interviews lined up. This one of Aussie Golf History is Kameruka Golf Course. It is an interview segment. I can't wait to bring it to you. Let's go. This is episode number 66. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to a segment of the podcast that I haven't done for a little while, and that is Aussie Golf History. And I'm really excited to bring this one to you. This is it's an interview this time around, and we're talking about a piece of Australian history that's been lost for quite some time. And I'm really excited to bring this back to your ears and get you excited about an interesting project in Australia that we'll be able to see if we can get this one across the line with a bit of help. So I welcome on the line, I have the chairman of a Society of Kameruka Golfers, Mr. Paul Carter. G'day, Paul. How are you?
I'm excellent, Steve. Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to be on your podcast.
Mate, thank you for doing this. Now, I will be upfront and say that I've done a bit of work with you for this little project in some of the media in the background and some of the social media side of life, and I'm excited to bring this out to the podcast audience because I think it's greatly important that we get people aware of this project, this rebuilding of a golf course that's been lost. So, mate, I want to start. Let's talk about the beginning. How did Kameruka come into your world, or how did you discover Kameruka? And I'm interested to find out how.
It was during COVID. I normally live in Melbourne, but because the golf courses in Melbourne were closed, I moved and lived in Merimbula in New South Wales for 12 months on.
So that's the south coast of New South Wales, isn't it?
South coast of New South Wales, north of Eden, south of Bega, east of Canberra.
Beautiful part of the world.
On the coast. It is. And being a keen golfer, my wife and I played most of the golf courses in the area, and there are over a dozen golf courses many, many times. But after a while, even keen golfers look for new courses to play.
Indeed. And like you said, it's a good golf destination too. I've been down that way and played a little bit too. It is a great little destination that golfers like to go to.
It is. To me, it's heaven, as it is to my wife and family. So I did what most people do. I got a book on what golf courses are in the area.
Sure.
And I found an entry that there was an Octoloni golf course at Candelo.
Now, that would have pricked your ears up.
The name Octoloni, of course, my wife and I go overseas to Britain once a year. We knew the Octoloni from St Andrews very, very well.
Of course.
So we thought, we've got to go play this. So we drive to Candelo, which is about half an hour inland from Merimbula, and it's on West Kameruka Road. And we start down West Kameruka Road, see no golf course, get to the end, come back again. Must have missed it. Go up again. Anyway, we went up and back. And so we get to the end near Merimbula, and I see there was a guy with his rubbish bins. And so I pull over and said, mate, have you heard about the golf course? He said, go in there and see the guy in the house in there. So, typical country. So I go in there, and this less than well-kept guy walks out. Hey, mate, what do you want? I said, I'm looking for the golf course. He said, the golf course? I said, the golf course? Yeah, it's over there. And he points to a paddock with cows on it. I said, what, the golf course? He said, yeah, it's over there, mate. It's over there. As if I'm stupid. Yeah. So I then started to look around, and he said, that's the first tee over there. And so there were some white paling rails there. And so I walk over, and sure enough, over the tee had grown a whole bunch of rubbish, but you could actually see the tee, and if you followed that with your eye over the creek, you can make out an indentation of a green. I thought, oh,
Wow.
how fantastic is this? So anyway, the guy from the house was going to be of no use, so I did some checking around with my friends, and I met one, Rob Owen, who happened to be the captain
Okay.
of the club 20 odd years ago. So I said, Rob, any chance of going and having a look at the course? And Rob said, yeah, I'll organise it. So a couple of days later, he brings his four-wheel drive out, and we go up and we go through this side gate down the hill, and Rob, in his four-wheel drive, takes us around every hole on the course.
Wow.
And he points out where the tees were, and on the second tee, there was this big black snake sitting there, so we didn't get too close to the second tee. Anyway, so we go all around the course, and it just blew my mind away.
Wow.
You could see the original design when he pointed out where the tees were, where the greens were, where the fairway ran. You could see the course. It just been overgrown, but all the bare bones were there.
So it's still essentially there. I mean, it sounds like to me, and you mentioned there that they'd stopped playing on it some 20 odd years ago. The bloke in the house was sort of saying, since it was last played. I get the impression that it's locked in a time capsule of sorts. It's just been sort of let go and grown over, and then no reason to change it. It's out there on a farm.
Oh, absolutely. Long story short, it hadn't been touched since it was built in 1914. The old golf course, the old golf club, had played it on the condition that they don't change it. And since they stopped playing it, no one had done anything to it. So it is exactly the same condition as the 1914 construction.
Wow. So, okay, now you've got me excited. And those that have listened to my podcast may have listened to Aussie Golf History before. And I did a segment on the history of Ernest Banks, who was the man who was sent out here to build this Kameruka Golf Course. And he had some other parts of his history. He further went up to Sydney after being part of Kameruka in the early days and did a little bit of work around some of the clubs there before he moved on. But some people know a little bit of this story about Kameruka that have listened to my podcast before, but I want to hear from you, Paul, that's how you sort of stumbled across, in a sense, this golf course, this lost golf course in Kameruka. Let's try and dig into that a little bit more, because it's got some incredible history, some wonderful connections, in a sense, with the local community, deep connections with the community, and some historic events around the world, obviously around that World War I time. And Sir Robert Lucas Tooth and the Tooth Empire are a key part of how this began. Can you tell us a bit about what you know there?
Absolutely. And I'll just add a bit to the finding of it. So we get out of the four-wheel drive, and I get on the phone to my mate Harley Cruz, and I say, Harley, you would not believe what I just discovered. So Harley was down at Club Catalina.
Yes, down Bateman's Bay.
Down Bateman's Bayway. And so Harley and Adrian Logue, who writes for the Golf Australia magazine, come over. They stay at my place in Merimbula, and we jump in my four-wheel drive, and I give them the same tour that Rob Owen had given me. And of course, they're blown away. So then we go back and we talk to Rob Owen, and then we find out everything you said about the history of the place, how it was created in 1914. Tooth was the patriarch of the Tooth family, and when you're growing up in Sydney as I was, there were two beers. There was Tooths and Recious in Sydney. In Melbourne, there was Carlton. In Brisbane, there was Forex. Adelaide, West End, and in Perth, there was Swan.
Right.
That's all everyone drank. So he had a half share of a monopoly on beer. So he was a very, very wealthy man. And he had bought Kameruka in the late 1800s and was turning it into an English-style village. And I mean, not just an estate, but a village where he had his own tenant farmers who were dairy farmers or who grew crops for him. He provided a school for them, a church, post office, stores, blacksmith, everything. So he provided the whole village on his estate, and they were share farmers.
That's incredible
for him.
That's building like you said, he's literally building a village, a town centre, as it were, and having families, and there were families involved in the farming and the share farming and the like. It becomes a real community setting, and that was some of the things, like you said, this English style, I suppose, village, local area. That was sort of what he was trying to transplant there and built back then. That's the early 1900s.
Late 1800s.
Or late 1800s, yeah, okay, wow.
Yeah. And so Tooth, as was typical of Australians in those days, he was a classic Anglophile, and he spent a lot of his time in England, and he actually became Sir Lucas Tooth. Everyone originally knew him as Tooth, but he became Sir Lucas Tooth. Anyway,
right.
So he was in England, and he saw that places like Glen Eagles and Turnberry had been created by the Great British Railway companies to bring tourists to a destination that they own by providing a very good hotel and a good golf course.
Okay.
So he wanted to bring tourists to his estate at Kameruka. So he said, okay, I'll build a grand hotel, which he called the hostel, and it's modelled after the Brighton Pavilion. I don't know if you've seen photos.
I've seen photos of the hostel, and now that you mention it, I can see where that comes from. I didn't realise.
It is. So he did that, and then he was talking, because he was a golfer, and he became involved with Laurie Octoloni, and
as one does.
As you would, yeah. And he got Octoloni with maps and so forth, and they did a layout. And then they got Ernest Banks, who you've discussed, from Dover, and Ernest Banks comes out with Octoloni's layout, and they start to build the golf course in 1914.
Incredible.
And everyone knows what happened in August 1914.
Well, this is when there's so many things coincide with the construction and building of the Kameruka Golf Course. The world starts to change dramatically, doesn't it? And it affects Australia in a lot of ways, and it comes to affect Kameruka in quite a traumatic way.
Well, what you've just said is so true, and around the world, and not just Australia, the period between the wars was horrific for everyone. But even at the end of World War One, there were issues. But we'll back up to 1914. So they start construction in 1914, and by that time, World War One has broken out. And the construction is then mired in an incredible tragedy for Tooth himself. Tooth had three sons, one of whom had served in the Boer War of 1901 in the New South Wales Lancers as a cavalry officer, and he dies on the Western Front in September.
Wow.
1914.
Devastating.
Absolutely. And then his second son dies from a sniper bullet in October 1914. So Tooth, who's all hail and well met, building a golf course, building a hotel, all of a sudden has lost his two sons. And long story short, in 1918, the third son dies.
Bloody
But
hell.
the whole of the war was tragic. Tragic not just for Tooth, but for the whole of the community of Candelo and Bega. Like in 1914, that was not a big community. I think there was just over 200 people or something like that. And 80 of them, or thereabouts, signed up. And of that 80, there was 40% casualty. Now you can imagine 40% of the 80 out of a community of 200. So it's 30 people were either killed or wounded.
That's
Just
astounding.
horrific.
That's just. I mean, growing up in a modern world, I can't wrap my head around the wars. I find it something that's so difficult to comprehend, and yet there in Kameruka, essentially, more or less a quarter of the population had been wounded or killed in war. I mean, the connection, the deep connection from that area, Kameruka, and the World War One and World War One, it would be traumatic at best. I can't get my head around the fact that they were building a golf course and a farming village and hearing news that the two of Tooth's heirs, two of the sons, had been killed in war. But not only that, and they're the people that own the area that they work for. Not only that, they would have known each other. They would have we know all farming communities all know each other. They're friends and well connected. They would have been hearing news every week that someone's, son had been killed in war. That would have just been coming on and on and on at that time. That would have been horrific to live through.
Absolutely. It really was. And the course opened in 1915. And in 1915, of course, in April, that's when the Gallipoli campaign was going on. And Gallipoli didn't finish till, I think it was October 1915. So, the course construction started when war broke out and Tooth lost two of his sons. And the course, when it was completed and opens, the Gallipoli campaign with all its casualties was going on. So it was just a horrific time to open a golf course.
And to try and build, and the locals that are building and being part of this project, part of the community to keep moving forward as I suppose they could only do back then. Like I said, hearing this news, yet they're still going forward. They're still trying to finish this project and move forward. And then, of course, if all of that isn't tragic enough, Sir Robert Lucas Tooth himself doesn't see through to the completion of the golf course. Tell us about what happens there with Sir Robert.
Yeah, in March 1915, this man who was just a powerhouse was absolutely devastated by the loss of his sons. In 1914, he'd actually divided the Kameruka estate into 3 parcels, one for each of his sons. So he was thinking of his succession and had it well marked out. And then overnight, virtually within 2 months, he lost 2 of his sons. And they say he died of a broken heart. He died in England of a broken heart in March 1915. It was terribly sad.
And so he's built this village, undertaking this project, and a worldly man, a huge man, and certainly in like I said, in business in Australia as well, building this golf course, and doesn't get to see it completed, doesn't get to see the community come through war and grow as a local community on the back of all of that sort of stuff as well. But this project of the golf course didn't get to see something that he really wanted to see being built there for the community and for tourism. Didn't get to see it through. 2 sons were killed, and then he passes away himself. I mean, that would have been devastating. The trauma that comes with this period and with the name of Kameruka is just so immense.
Mm.
It's so huge, and they just, I can imagine farming people, country. What else can they do? They can only keep moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. And Tooth had been a member of Parliament, and his house in Sydney is called the Swifts. It's at the bottom of Darling Point Road. As you're going down the road, it's on your left-hand side. I think it's now owned by the Moran family.
Wow.
But it is one of the grand old mansions, and I mean grand in the extreme, mansions of Sydney. Shows you the wealth of the man. And he had the grand house in Sydney, the grand estate there, but that didn't stop the war taking his sons. Yeah,
it is horrific. And then yeah, look, I've got to pause because it really takes you, it sets you back just thinking about, I've got goosebumps thinking about this whole story, and hearing you talk about the details of the family and the local community, the connection between everyone. It brings people closer together too, no doubt. I'm sure they would have all been leaning on each other to get through such an incredibly traumatic time, difficult time. And then, and still trying to, so Ernest Banks is there building this golf course to get it completed.
And Ernest, as your listeners know, is quite a character in himself, but he's come out from Dover with Octoloni's plans. Neither he nor Octoloni had any idea of what Australia was like. Like, Australia was 10,000 miles away, which in those days with travel was, almost to the moon. And they had plans to build a penal architecture style golf course. And there was nothing like it anywhere else in the colony. And that's probably why Tooth wanted that style of golf course. But when we're out there, you can see what penal architecture is about. If you play Prestwick in Scotland, Prestwick has amazing penal architecture. And penal architecture is you can't go around, you can't navigate it around a bunker or around a hazard, you've got to go over it. It's like the 17th of Sawgrass. You either hit the green or you're in the water.
Or a challenge failed. I mean, and you're right, the penal school of architecture, the penal style as it's often described, there's a challenge in front of you that you must tackle as a player. There's no ifs, buts or maybes. It is there. It's something that has to be navigated through as you play the golf hole. And it can be considered quite difficult. And I suppose to hear, we talked about before, this golf course at Kameruka has been locked up as a time capsule. A lot of Australian golf courses in the early days that did have some examples of this through the time that they were designed and built have long since had those design elements changed, removed, massaged, and disappeared altogether. As we had the golden era of architecture come in with the Sandbelt and Alistair Mackenzie and the like, and we had this different sort of more strategic style in that era, and that's what we celebrate a lot more. So we've probably lost anywhere in Australia that I can certainly think of that has a original penal school of architecture that is on the ground from when it was built in the early 1900s. That doesn't exist anymore. So is that something that makes Kameruka special? That it's still there on the ground, just grown over?
It is. The only bit of penal architecture that I've played is the on the 15th of the West at Royal Melbourne, where for your third shot to the uphill green, you've got to go over this mound, this very hot, grassy mound, which is probably 1.5 meters high. There's no way around it because the mound goes all the way across the course. But compared to English standards, that mound, which was part of the old Sandringham course Royal Melbourne took over, was minor. As I was going to say, with Prestwick, you can play the Alps, which I think is number 17. You play a par 4 and you hit your drive. And then you're confronted with this 25-metre mound in front of you. And the green's over the other side.
Is that serious? I've not been over there. I don't know, mate. I'm taking your word. Are you fair dinkum?
Yeah, and on the 7th at Prestwick, they've got a par 3, again, 25-metre mound with the green on the other side, and they put a stone on the hill as to where the flag is, and you hit towards the stone. But
Wow.
even where Banks came from at Dover, just up the road is Royal St George's.
Yes.
And Royal St George's, I think it's about the 5th or 6th. It's called the Maidens, where you've got to hit either you drive massively over this hill, because you can't see what's on the other side, or you lay up, then you go over the hill. But you've got to go over the hill. There are so many examples there. At North Berwick, you have stone walls.
Yes, the famous stone walls. I've not been there, obviously, with the green on the other side.
Yeah, and there are so many examples of that. But Kameruka is the only one in Australia that has the whole layout. The whole layout has penal architecture.
So it's all there. It's all there on the ground. Can I ask, you went around the property a couple of trips to have a look at the holes. What was that rediscovery moment like, certainly the first time with Rob Owen, that you're seeing it, because you're looking at the golf course from a different lens is the way that I would be conceiving, sort of perceiving that you're down there doing, because you're not looking at it from someone who's played it 20-something, 30 years ago. You're looking at it for the very first time and hearing about this connection with Tooth and the time that it was built, and it's 100 years old and they haven't been able to change it. And you're like, I'm seeing something that hasn't been altered since the time it was built. So the best part of just over 100 years, 110 years more or less.
Absolutely. And yeah, like I'll give you an example, and that's the fifth hole. The fifth hole, you play the fourth green, which is another story in itself. But you then walk up probably 20 metres up to the tee, and you stand on the tee. Then you've got the 20 metres down. Then you've got another hill 20 metres ahead of you. But the hill ahead of you slopes severely from right to left. And if you miss the landing point on that hill, you'll be right down the bottom of the hill playing to a totally blind green.
Wow.
And the smart person says, I'll play to the right. You play to the right. That's where the out of bounds is. So I'm standing there and I thought, how do you play this hole? And there are so many. There's a par 3. And say, how am I going to stop the ball on this green? And the evil bunkers that surround it. I thought, wow, what a little amazing gym this place is.
Incredible. And, I mean, there's some really impressive pedigree to some of the background of Kameruka as far as a golf course goes. And I note that there's a structure, they call it the kiosk, in the middle of the property there somewhere. So, I mean, I assume there's a bit of age in that as well that's out there in the middle of the golf course. There's so many little parts to the land there it's got this history.
Well, the kiosk was also built in 1915, and that was where you could get your lemonade and your Pims as you're going around the course. Of course, it's near the first green, the second tee, the 8th green, and you can get across there on the ball. So that's where you got your Pims or your lemonade as you're playing golf,
Right.
But just staying with that, and we went and opened the kiosk as you do. And we opened it, and you wouldn't believe what we saw. What we saw were the names of all the golf holes. And like the first is called Gallipoli, and in the kiosk was a nameplate, Gallipoli, on it, along with the tee markers.
Oh, so these are the hole names, the signs that for the holes.
7 of the 9 holes are named after horrific battles in World War One that Australia was involved in. Like hole 1 is Gallipoli, 2 is the crater, 3 is Ypres, 4 is Shrapnel Gully, again from Gallipoli, 5 is Hill 60, 6 is Salonika, and 7 is the Labyrinth. And there's a story of horrific battles and tragedy with each one of those battles, and the holes are named after them.
So there's again, we go to this connection of war, it's a part of the makeup. I've got goosebumps talking about it, mate. Again, and I'm hearing this emotive connection with the golf course and this time. I just being out there on the golf course when you were there, no doubt in time gone by, to name the holes after these significant periods in war and battles. I mean, you can go and play golf. Obviously, you can't now, and that's part of what you're doing is trying to get to a point where we can do that one day. The holes are named after these significant moments in war, and the connection runs deeper again. And we're talking about playing golf. I mean, there's an experience on multiple levels that is coming and that's there at Kameruka.
Oh, it is like just the 2 holes I mentioned, the fifth with the hills on either side. Hill 60 is the name of the 5th hole. And Hill 60 refers to a huge tunnelling effort where the Allied tunnellers went under the German lines for several hundred metres and built this big cabin in which they put explosives. And when I think it was the 3rd Battle of Ypres started, they blew up the cabin along with, I think 10,000 Germans and 300 metres of the German trench lines.
Wow.
It was horrific. And the hole before it, Shrapnel Gully, is part of Gallipoli, where the Turks, having the high ground, could fire down on the Anzacs. And you can imagine the 4th green in between the valley of the 2 hills that I mentioned, being there, and on the high ground to your left where to the right where the tee is, and on the left where the fairway is, that's the high ground. So you could imagine, being on the green and I hate to say it, but Turkish snipers just looking down at you, you would feel so vulnerable.
So we're getting a sense that they're not just names thrown around, just called names of random moments in the war history. They're relative to the topography of the golf course, which intrigues me even more. And I know that, as I said, I've done a bit of work with you for this, for the Kameruka Golf Course, and I've done a bit of research into these names and looking at the topography of the land and looking at the routing of the holes. For being called Shrapnel Gully, you can walk. I get a sense, and I haven't done it, but you can be walking up or driving. Essentially, we're driving up the 4th fairway, and you're being thrown back to this period in the Great War where it's named after similar topography. That's the significance of it, like you said. So you get this sense of the high ground left and right, the big steep banks flanking the fairway, and the I suppose the exposure that the soldiers had in the real Shrapnel Gully in Gallipoli in Turkey. And you've been to those places. I know that you've travelled there personally. So as a golf course, it must be an interesting feel. People are going to get a sense, hopefully one day, and they did get a sense in the past, of this real similar style location. And again, I go back to, it's golf. It's a golf course, but it's got this emotive attachment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, what you just said encapsulated everything. The 7th is called the Labyrinth, which was a series of caves the Allied tunnellers expanded significantly, and they had thousands of their troops out of the shelling in those caves, and they had a hospital and all sorts of things. And that's the par 3. So you're up top and you're looking down, and you can see all these bunkers, which are like caves, which are going to get your ball, and the water's at the back, and so, gee, but the bunkers are double-sided. So you have a bunker, and then within the bunker you have a hill, and then you have another side to the bunker. And that's not just around the greens, but on the fairway bunkers,
Wow.
just in case your ball is lucky enough to run through the bunker, up over the hill, it'll run down into another bunker.
We'll make sure we get you one way or another. You get you're fine. And this is that penal style of architecture you mentioned earlier on. This is the essence of that challenge directly in front of the player, directly in front of the golfer as you navigate hole by hole through your round. Certainly at Kameruka.
Absolutely. It's very similar to the Marquis de Sade playing golf, mate. Yeah, let me tell you.
Quite the challenge. So we're hearing this deep connection on so many levels. I'm thinking of the Kameruka families that work there. So Robert Lucas Tooth and his family being the family and the patriarch behind the region, behind the farm, behind the village in their tragedy. And then we get this I don't even know quite how to describe a connection with the golf course to this moment in time to sort of, I suppose, write in history this deep connection in a different way. There's just so much going on. And
it is. And the names of the holes, Steve, were given not by Tooth because he was departed, but when the local community were given a license to play the course by the Tooth family, it was the veterans.
Wow.
The veterans of the area who gave these holes the names. Like, this whole course is around the tragedy of World War One.
Wow.
So many ways.
And I used that term time capsule earlier, and you mentioned there that the golf club, when it was formed and they were given the rights to play and use the golf course, they weren't allowed to change the golf course. That was one of the terms of being able to play there.
It was, and it was a real master and servant relationship. The license agreement had the ability of the Tooth family to terminate the license without notice. So, not only didn't they change it, they would have been foolish to, because they would have been tossed. They had the ability to be tossed out on a moment's notice. So. But the locals took it over in 1932, and they took it over because, again, the tragedy of World War One that Tooth felt went through all the management, and everyone on the state management lost interest in the hostel and the golf club because they were being built when the sons were lost. And so the hostel was ultimately pulled apart, and the bricks used to build a community hall for the people there, and the golf course just wasn't used. So the community got together and put their hand up and said, "Please, sir, can we play the golf course?" And the Tooth family said, "Okay, but we're not going to put any money in." And so it was maintained by the local golfers, and ultimately that's what brought it down. Is the work became too much. And they couldn't compete in terms of condition with other golfers like Chura or Pambula or Bermagui or Naruma. They just couldn't compete. So people didn't play it, and it fell into disrepair, and it hasn't been used for about 20 years now.
Wow. And that, I suppose, that term in that licensing agreement is probably what saved it so incredibly well and preserved it, because it could have been, and we know golf courses that for all sorts of different reasons get designers and architects in, they do work themselves, they change things, adjust things. That really preserved the essence and it's probably kept it why it's so, I think it's quite important. That is, I think it's really interesting that little clause, and I say little loosely, of course, but that's what's preserved the essence of what you saw out there that's still on the ground today, 100 and so many years later.
It is, and not only is it the only example, a complete example of penal architecture in Australia, it's probably the oldest golf course in Australia in its existing layout. original land.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a... You're telling us so much, Paul. There's so much in this. Is from a drive that I'm just trying to get this right. This is from a drive that you and your wife just stumbled across in a book. You go, there's an old golf course up here. Let's go. It's Octoloni. Is that right? Let's go for a drive and find out. And look what's been unearthed, and what's been discovered.
It has. But there's a great team of which you'll remember. There's Harley. There's Adrian Lowe. There's Peter Freeman. There's Liz McIntyre, there's Pat Wilson, Rob Owen. There are so many people who put all the little pieces together to come up with what I'm talking about now. It's an amazing team we've got, and we're on the ground running to try and get this course up and running, but the odds are against us, mate.
Now,
to be honest, the odds are against us.
And they are. And this is a battle, and I do pardon the pun on using that term, but it is a battle, and it's something that we've talked about now that we probably see some of the reasons why it's so important. What are the reasons for you, Paul, that makes it so important to try and preserve, and this goes into what we'll talk about a little bit now, the challenge of getting it to a point where you might be able to rebuild. The goal is to rebuild this golf course. Why is it so important to you?
It's important, like historically, I love the Australian character grew so much during World War One. It took us from boys and made us a nation of men. And the Anzac spirit has to be remembered, and this is one of the classic examples of it. But then you've got the golf course, being just the only example of penal architecture, which will drive you to distraction. Once you play a penal architect, if you miss a shot, you're a dead man. Let me tell you, and you die quite often playing the golf course. Yeah.
And in terms of its preservation, we probably. Talking to you now, I'm learning a lot more than just my research has suggested, and even just some of the conversations that we've had through work. This is a much more in-depth version, and everyone's listening. I shudder at the thought that this could get lost forever.
You're quite right, and that's my fear. That's why I formed the society, and that's why we've arranged complete funding of the restoration. We don't need government money to restore it. We've got the money to do it. We've got the architect because we've actually got one of the original as-built plans to the golf course, so we can build it exactly to how it was. And we won't be guessing. We'll know exactly what was there. We've got a team ready to do it. What we need is to get, firstly, the golf course heritage listed so it can't be destroyed, and then negotiate with the owner to undertake the restoration works. Two separate, but the first is to get the heritage listing in place, and that's the big battle at the moment, Steve.
And that's the challenge. That's the uphill battle to do that. And you mentioned the Society of Kameruka Golfers. That's a group of people who are interested in this project, who are interested in supporting getting this, I suppose, off the ground, as it were, to get it the first stage of that heritage listing, so then you can take the next steps. And I don't mean to be blunt and pick up on a point there, Paul, but you said, if I can reiterate correctly, that you're not looking for government funding. Does that mean you're not looking for any support from any government grants or nothing? No, this is private money.
Yeah, it's my own money, and I'm more than happy to put my money up where my mouth is to make this thing happen.
Wow.
If you rely on governments, that ain't going to happen.
Wow.
And the point with heritage listing, Steve, is the whole Kameruka estate has been through a heritage listing process. All the main buildings, all the outbuildings, the blacksmith shop, the church, they're all heritage listed.
Okay.
And the first tee and the clubhouse are also listed.
Okay.
They're all listed. So what we need, however, is to get the rest of the land, which was omitted in the initial heritage listing, put onto the heritage listing. It's not as if the owner is going to be blindsided by a heritage listing. He knows about it. He bought it knowing it was heritage listed. All we've got to do, when I say all, the most important thing we've got to do is get the rest of the land heritage listed. Then we can negotiate to give the owner a golf course that he will be truly proud of and which every golfer in Australia can play.
Yeah, wow, and that. There's a lot of moving parts there, Paul. I mean, like you said, we've both said it's an uphill battle. The battle, it's all laid out ahead of you. The challenge that needs to be negotiated. I suppose I wonder, is that something that can be made? I know you're working hard on it. How much support do we need?
Well, we need everyone who's at all interested in preserving this to put in a submission. And a submission can be just an email saying, I've looked into this. It looks a fantastic project. I supported getting heritage listing. I'm not looking for a great thesis. What I need is people to agree with my thoughts that this is worth preserving and restoring and coming to play. Because when you come and play, Steve, assuming it all goes well, there'll be two lots of tees. There'll be the original tees, and if you play off the original tees, you will have a set of hickory golf clubs you got from our clubhouse, and you'll play with the hickory clubs and the hickory style balls.
Wow.
To the tees. If you want to play with your new equipment and the new balls, we'll give you a tee which may be considerably further back.
And fair enough too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the ability, if we can get it up to create something that everyone will want to play, is to me apparent. I've made the business case to the owner. I'm making the business case to the minister who I'm talking to tomorrow. That's the Heritage Minister in New South Wales tomorrow, about the business case. And hopefully, we can at least get the first base. At the moment, we're at home plate facing our first pitch, but we've got to get over the line, mate. Got to get over the line.
It's an incredible golf course and an incredible story behind it, and I think that's what makes it so important in my mind. And like I said, I'm happy to talk about it and let everyone know where I stand, because I think it's something that's well worth being supported. I love my history in golf, and I'm learning more about it all the time. And then when I come across this story, and Harley Cruz has been on this podcast before, we've talked about this Kameruka story as well, and because he's attached to the project, it's something that the more I hear, the more I read about it, the more I do my own research about it, the more I think it's not such a case of, can we afford to do this and bring it back? It's more like, can we afford to lose this? I don't think the golf landscape and Australian history can afford to lose this, because we do lose things. Our European history isn't that old in this country, and every now and then you'll hear about an old building, or I'll look up some research and go, wow, look at that old historic property, and it's knocked down and it's now a block of units somewhere in Sydney. And these things happen, but this isn't in the middle of Sydney. This isn't progress that's going to be overtaken. We have an opportunity, and people out there listening have an opportunity to try and help save this golf course and bring it back to enjoy and feel that emotive connection.
Absolutely, Steve. Absolutely. And I don't know if you're aware of the movie Field of Dreams.
Yes. How can you not be? It's a great movie.
There's a great quote in there. The guy who plays Kevin Costner, he says, "This is my most special place of all in the world, Ray. Once a place touches you like this, the wind never blows so cold again. You feel for it like it was your child. And when you come to Kameruka, that's what you'll feel."
Wow. Oh, so many moments, Paul. We're chatting away that I get this feeling of goosebumps and a part of history. You talk about it. I can keep going around. We can keep going around in circles. That is a beautiful quote. That's so apt for Kameruka.
And that's what will make it. People have been to Barnbougle and they will travel to Barnbougle. And Barnbougle's a special occasion, just as King Island is a special occasion. And then you can go to the Outer Hebrides off Scotland and play a course called Ashkanish, which is an old Tom Morris course, which they dug up out of the farming field, similar to this. And it is the most amazing experience. And there are a lot of places around the world that value their history. It would be horrible if Australia's not one of them.
Absolutely, and I like that part you talked about with the hickory clubs and playing it from an era that it was born out of, and playing and feeling that experience. And some of the clubs and some of the like that they used back then, I don't even know if I could hit a golf ball. I play a 5. I used to play a 5. I don't even know if I could use some of those weapons around the golf course that they used to use, let alone the challenge in the architecture.
Well, do you know where the first British Open was ever held?
No.
It's a place called Musselburgh.
Okay.
And there's now a golf track around the outside of it, but the 9 holes is still there.
Okay.
And you can go and play the old course with the old sticks and the old balls and get your way around it.
Wow.
And one of the great things about that track, by the way, is I think it's on about third or fourth hole. It goes past a pub, and you can stop by and get mail around you. But the thing most people don't realise is the sand wedge, which we use so often in our rounds, is only an invention of the 1930s. And before that, you had a very sharp instrument to try and get it out of bunkers. It's an art form.
I like the word you used, instrument. I mentioned weapon before. I think either of those are fairly apt when it comes to the type of clubs that we used back then. I can't imagine because, like you said, you mentioned the labyrinth par 3, downhill par 3, completely surrounded by bunkers, and you're using a knife effectively with a club with no bounce, as we see it at the bottom, to bring the club out. It would have been a challenge on so many fronts from a golf perspective.
Yeah. And that's where the expression you knifed the shot, because you end up with this big a whole line across your ball. You've actually put a hole.
Done that with the balladas when I was a kid, don't worry.
That's exactly right.
Now, I also think of the Kameruka side and being a farm area now that's been grazed. I mean, what's there to bring it back? You've got Harley Crews involved. We mentioned a golf course architect, and I can speak for his work here at Kalara in Sydney, which I've seen, doing work over Royal Perth with CDP at the moment. They're engaged over there. I mean, you got a guy like Harley involved in rebuilding and bringing this back from its original design up to speed. And you mentioned Pat Wilson. Now, Pat's a greenkeeper from the area, a local boy from the South Coast who's a very well-experienced greenkeeper, travelled all over the world, working down there. He's involved. You've got 2 key people on the ground to potentially be involved if this can get going. How are you going to bring this back out? This is awesome.
Well, Pat's an awesome young man, and he's a pleasure to be around because he's a very clear-thinking chap. But Pat's idea is to get the maintenance cost of this nowhere near as high as a typical golf course. It will be a minimalist golf course, which, all the great courses, like St Andrews and so forth, they don't spend anywhere near what we spend on golf courses here. And, we'll use things such as to keep the grass down. We'll use sheep, as they do at Brora and some of the other great Scottish courses. The area has love grass, and the sheep, certain breeds of the sheep, will eat the love grass down.
Okay.
And I think you've seen a photo around 1945 of how the local club use sheep to keep it down.
Yes, on the 4th hole, I think it is. It's on the website.
It is, and even today in some of the Harry Colt golf courses around Amsterdam, they have a herd of goats, which they use to keep the blackberries down, and they put them in an area with an electric fence, and the goats just take all the roughage out of the way, and away they go. Yeah.
So this is, and you mentioned Pat's a very switched on greenkeeper. Well, like I said, well experienced as well. I mean, this is a sustainable way of looking after a golf course. So you said keeping costs down, we're using farming animals to keep the rough down, as they used to do, because they didn't have the technology, they didn't have the equipment, there was no other way. So it's a throwback to that era, but equally it becomes a sustainable way of doing it at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to spend money on fertilizer and unnecessary sort of mowing and so forth, you know.
Not to mention the price of fuel.
You want the fairways to run hard and fast, and you don't want the mowers to take out the indentations. So you want the indentations there to throw your ball offline, unfortunately. You know, you have to have the experience, and golf courses, in particular the northern part of Scotland, the 9 holes, just have one greenkeeper. So we'll have one greenkeeper supervised by Pat, but it will be a traditional Scottish maintenance program. So don't come here expecting, Augusta-type greens or fairways. You won't get it. Go to Dornoch in the summer and you'll get a sense of it, or what everyone saw of St Andrews in the summer. That's what you'll get. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love the people that you've got involved, and we talk about the Society of Kameruka Golfers. Got to mention that, because that's the support and the background of people, being part of to help build this wave of support, and they're going to be, they're going to want to be part of it too the day that it comes to opening.
Absolutely. It'll never be Paul Carter's golf course. That's not my aim. It's a golf course for every golfer in Australia, and I'll pass control of the society across to a whole bunch of other people. It's not my golf course. This is a project for every person in Australia, whether they're a golfer or not, because the intention is to get a museum up there, which is a museum not just of the golf course, but also of the Kameruka estate, and also of the war and how it impacted the local community.
The connection, wow, it's there you go, Paul. That's a huge undertaking and effort to build something to pass down through Australia. That's to pass on to the rest of us as time keeps marching forward.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah.
And sorry, go on.
We're all here for a short period of time, Steve, so let's make the most of while we're here and leave something for future generations.
And also to remember where we've come from.
My word. Very, very true.
Mate, and one of the other things, I've got things bouncing out of my head, and I don't mean to keep throwing them at you, but I think of this being a farming property, as it has been for the last recent time of its life, and for most of its life, a majority of it is obviously in a farming region. But I think of Barnbugle. You mentioned Barnbugle, and I think of that being Richard Sattler, a golf. There's 3 golf courses there now at Barnbugle, and anyone who knows anything about golf knows it's one of the best in the country, or 3 of the best in the country, and now in the world, on the world stage, it's been there since its opening. I mean, it was a cattle farm and a potato farm essentially, and that's the linksland along the edge of Tasmania, and it's not near anything. It's not near Launceston. It's an hour and a half drive, more or less, from the airport to get out there. It's a destination. But the idea of building Barnbugle on a farm and making it work was probably far-fetched at the time, and now we see it as this amazing destination that's normal to travel to. The world of golf is really open to these kind of ideas. Could Kameruka be this sort of destination place as well? Is that the idea of it too, to be somewhere that we want to travel to as golfers? I know I would. Oh,
categorically, not just for the enjoyment of playing, but the history that goes with it. Candelo is in itself, which is just down the road, is a wonderful historic town which will have accommodation for it. And then you can go there and then you can play. Narooma, Bega, Bermagui, Tura, Pambula, Merimbula.
The list goes on, Paul. It's a great golfing destination.
You may not leave, Steve. You may not leave.
Might have to buy somewhere down there that can be a holiday destination to go to. But I see so many reasons why I would love to see Kameruka saved, preserved, and rebuilt to enjoy, for everyone to enjoy again.
Absolutely. And it's only half an hour from Merimbula Airport.
Very nice to know.
And that service from Sydney and Melbourne by both Qantas and Rex.
There you go. I think they're probably already wondering when they can start to see how long a flight takes from Sydney and Melbourne.
Get them to put their submission in before, because there won't be anything to go to unless people put in their submissions.
And that's what we need. That's got to be done fast, is to get those submissions in. And you can do that at kamerukagolf.com. Has got the details. That's the website. We're going to have some social media posts up there to follow the links to as well. But the essence of that is to get it to the Heritage Council of New South Wales, and the details are on the website. If you just click through, there's a couple of news headlines there that are clickable links that'll get you through to find out those details. You can read the newsletter there as well on the website.
And
Paul,
the deadline is the 10th.
That's it, the 10th. That's not far away, the 10th of August.
No,
so there's only a few days to get things in. So for those that are interested in doing so, and we would ask everyone, I certainly can ask. I'm going to be putting my submission in, and I know plenty of people who have, but it's not just the number of those that have, it's the number of those that you just got to have a lot of support to do this, to show that people want it saved.
Exactly right. Yep. Absolutely.
So, Paul, the challenges are there and clear that what lay ahead. I'm curious to ask you a question in I suppose, in parting. Mate, I think of the day would come in the future where you get to rebuild Kameruka. I want to know, what does the opening day look like for you? You've got to look ahead. You've got to be optimistic about this. You don't come into these sorts of challenges without being so. What does opening day look like for you, Paul, the day that might come?
Well, opening day will start with a Hickory Championship. Clearly there'll be an acknowledgement of country, because in addition to the golf course, there are some Aboriginal sites up on the higher parts of the course, which we will appropriately acknowledge and restore, as well as the golf course. And I think the way Australia is at the moment, we should acknowledge that there was something there before the golf course. So there will be an acknowledgement of that. There will be a Hickory competition, and then there'll be one heck of a party afterwards. Everyone invited.
And if we could have tooth beer, I'm sure that would be there as well.
That's exactly right, mate. Yeah.
No, look, Paul, I appreciate your time in talking so openly about Kameruka and what it means to you, and certainly what you'd love to see brought back out of it. It's such a special story in Australian history, in the local history, to have something like this preserved for all to see, all visitors to understand what that period of time in the early 1900s meant to the local Kameruka people and the families. That connection it would be incredible to go down there and understand when you go out and play golf. I think it's huge.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you're aware, but so we have members of the Kameruka Society who currently reside in the US and say, when's it going to open?
Wow.
So there is interest.
There is interest. That's great. We just need more interest, and certainly to be able to put this all up to showcase the local region as much for all the other things that are there, and it's a wonderful part of Australia. And to add a golf destination to that would be quite amazing. And I think it's something that we should strive to see if it can be saved. And then this will be coming out through the whole process, is to get a golf course that we can go and enjoy and understand more about Australian history and the local area. So I think it's fantastic, Paul. Thank you very much for your time, Paul. Appreciate it. And for everyone listening, it's kamerukagolf.com. Get those submissions in by the 10th of August. So it's only a few days, and see if we can help get this one across the line. A very unique project, and something that we may never come across again in this country. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, what did you think of that one, ladies and gentlemen? What a segment that Aussie Golf History was about Kameruka Golf Course with Paul Carter, chairman of the Society of Kameruka Golfers. Paul's a wonderful guy. You can hear his passion behind Kameruka. You can hear his experience in his travels around the world and understanding the architecture and the uniqueness that is in Kameruka. And what a story! What a story! Of Kameruka, the connection with so many facets of Australian history, of world history, the tragedy of the region in connection with World War I. It's just such a deep story in so many ways, and with Paul behind this project to rediscover and rebuild Kameruka for something that we can all enjoy in the future, I only hope, and I tip my hat to Paul, and I'm behind Paul and the project. I just can't wait for the day that hopefully, fingers crossed, this project gets off the line, and I want to go down there and enjoy it. I just an opportunity missed. I wasn't alive in the early days, and I didn't know about it when I was much younger. To bring this course back to its glory, in all its glory, and make a destination out of Kameruka that we can all go and enjoy and learn about so many things from the region, from its connections, like I said before, in the wars. Just unbelievable. And we don't have this opportunity in Australia very often, if at all. And the way that Paul was able to come across Kameruka with his wife, what an incredible, I suppose, accidental journey that started out to be and has become this project with an incredible goal ahead. So, look, I hope you enjoyed that one with Paul Carter. I certainly enjoyed talking to Paul about it and bringing out his story. And as I mentioned, I have done some work with Paul and helping promote this project because I believe in it as well. And I wanted to make sure that we could bring it out to you guys so you could hear the story and make your own minds up as to whether you think it's something that should be saved. I certainly do. Paul certainly does. And there's plenty of people around that do as well. And I think it's something that we shouldn't miss out on saving for all of us to enjoy and look back at some of the history in Australian golf. What an amazing place. So that's Aussie Golf History, guys. I hope to bring you more to it. I hope you enjoyed it. Get to kamerukagolf.com on the website. Click the links to get over to the newsletter, the July newsletter there, where you'll find information about how you can put a submission forward to the Heritage Council of New South Wales in support of the project. That's really what Paul needs. You heard him mention it. That's what needs to be done before the 10th of August. So only a few days left, not very long to get those submissions in, and that's really what Paul needs to help get this along so that he can take the next step and work towards rebuilding Kameruka. Now, also get onto the social media to stay up to date. Kameruka Golf on Instagram, Kameruka Golf on Facebook, and Kameruka Golf on Twitter. But like I said, that website, kamerukagolf.com, and that's where you can go and find the information on how to put that submission forward to the Heritage Council of New South Wales to get this first step done in seeking heritage listing. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Please like, share, subscribe, and like I said, I hope to bring you more Aussie Golf History soon. Stay tuned with me, and I really do appreciate your support, and put a review up if you don't mind, star review or written review, really appreciate it as you help get this podcast out and around further to the world, and certainly further within Australia. We want to get it across as many people's ears as possible so you can all enjoy and learn more at the same time. Thank you very much, guys. As always, you hit them clean, we'll keep them green, and I'll catch up with you very soon.